Hello, hello. Today I'm going to present my midterms presentation. Basically, my midterms is somewhat a combination of REST API and also, of course, some front end and back end development. The first one is I use somewhat three main, say, additional functions, just express, course, and additional five is UID. Express basically just made it much easier to somewhat handle everything, acting as somewhat of a middleware for everything. So I don't have to use say the HTTP say function in JavaScript to somewhat handle everything to make the website better. So much easier, right? Force basically allows to an easier implementation of the front end and back end of my application because I use both of them. And of course, UID, just create an ID. I will explain it later. From my index JavaScript, basically there is the Express Force app, and I have my port 5000. Simple as that. I use Force, Jake, and Express, and of course, since I use some front end, so say HTML, CSS, everything, I use to make sure that the static, static say parts, which is my website, will be still used. And of course, routes, simple as that. And I have basically, you know, tell me where my website is from, localhost. The first one it should go is to my controllers. The controllers use the function, the say uh, function of somewhat like product which is called UID, which basically allows to create a unique ID. Very simple. So I don't have to create a function to create a new ID. I could just basically use the function UID and create a completely unique ID. So I don't have to create a function to get to Activity 7, where I have to basically create a function and have make sure that all of it are complete and all up to date. So basically, it just makes it much easier. In my user controller, I have basically different ones, which is basically the create users, which basically most of their somewhat logic can be transferred to my script JavaScript. But I will explain it later, right? So basically, the controller basically create the ID push, basically the and send basically a message to the user from the create user, get user, delete user, update user, from your name and everything, and get user, simple one. Get user and user. And for my routes user culture, basically just create the route. Simple as that. That's basically what they do. Uh, you can actually have them combined, but in the tutorial, you just make it. The guy said that just it should be done just to make it much easier to debug and to basically organize the problem. And next one is my website, basically. This is my HTML, very simple, nothing very complicated. I also use somewhat model which allows to basically create basically a pop-up window that that will be shown later. And I have my CSS, very simple CSS, not be complicated. And I have my Java. This is where the majority of the function of the controller was transferred into. The first one is just uh, a bunch of variable declaration from add product button model to product. Very simple. Just product just variable declaration. Next one is commit hash. Basically, using the API REST method, I basically have HTTP local serve users basically and it just basically update my all of the users. Simple of that. For my get item ID, this is basically where I basically search basically uh, using the, of course, the API method of my localhost users, I use the response of JSON and filter, and use the filter function to basically filter all of either from either using the ID or my user or my first username. Simple as that. And for again, very simple for my add button, close button. This is basically where the pop-up window that will be shown later will be shown. Either it should be removed, it should be displayed or be removed. Simple. So we look at it. Very simple. For my add event listener, this is where basically the model is basically where it basically update the user data from the name, the specific tags. Now using the REST API method, we have different calls like say get, patch, post, and obviously. Here, for editing a product, we use a method patch. Using the REST API method of localhost server slash the ID of the product. Using the patch method and of course the header because JSON, and to stringify the user data, because of course you need to basically make sure it's actually editable to my factor JSON. Then show us a text message, very simple as that. Now, if we're going to somewhat create the user, we use the method post. The patch is for editing, and post is for basically saving on your user or product. Basically, header is very simple, very basically the same as my editing method is basically using that method post. Okay, method is very simple. And we use after that we use basically remove the pop-up window. That is for show all the other features very simple. Now for the update product, basically this is where you update the product, where you should basically say pop up a window, like ID, first name, age, last name, and still user ID and user basically. This basically the some of the design for the product that will be shown later. So next one is basically for the deleting of product. With the REST API method, because the token slash users slash user ID and use the method delete because for REST API you have basically update, get, post, patch, and delete, which basically differs in how what action you're going to do. And I use the delete function to basically delete the user. And that's it. And for edit button known for selector, basically you basically edit the from the name, description, and price basically to it well as like the text, users, and this simple success message and clear form to remove everything so walang save. So basically kung nag-type ka yun, mawawala pag kung may bago, save mo that. So all of these are to create somewhat the main somewhat function and say logic behind the front. To show you the front end, this is sample input basically product. Simple front end basically. So if you want to add the product, I use add the button, which I can later previously from my name. So yeah, my description is going to be a then my price is since 01063. And if I use the submit button, it should save. I have the success message and everything, same button. So you can see the UID created a very unique and random ID. That's just it. And my name, price, and description. Now that's basically and along the way, I'm also using the get method where basically it just updates everything, right? Now, let's say I want to edit my, say, product, right? I could do that first by using the edit button, which basically will allow the edit. First one is this. Now I can basically edit this. So let's say my favorite artist is going to be Doge, and the description is basically my favorite some famous like just basically this, and that's where I find a glimpse of us. So I copy that here, and that's it. And for the price, it's still use monthly listener, which is basically 8,801. So I don't know if I can basically that again. So that's it. And if I submit this, the product is now updated. Very simple. And let's say I want to search it. You can either search using the ID, which is updated live. So file the CD. So if I say I use wrong one, so this, well, wala siya. I can also use search the Joji. Of course, wala siya. To better somewhat show this, I'll just add a new product. To better showcase what it is. So basically, if I search, say, uh, 55 BP, oh, wala, of course, si Joji. And if I say Patrick, wala siya. So if I search Joji, kahit yung name lang is mahahunt ko siya. And of course, kaya ko mag-delete. Of course, I can delete this. So, like, search ko pa yan, wala na yan. Same with this. If I delete this, wala na rin yan. So, Joji, yung ID, wala na siya. So, ayan yung project. A very simple product maker. This is it. And that's all. And thank you.